Hi guys, it's Megan from Vigilante Vibes, and in honor of today, February 14th, Valentine's Day, I want to discuss some of my favorite Marvel couples from the comics and some from the MCU. So let's dive in. I'm going to start with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. Jessica Jones and Luke Cage are a long-standing power couple, first meeting in the Alias comics in 2001. It's interesting to see the two characters make it work even with their traumatic backstories. Luke and Jess have both confided in each other with their traumas, everything they've gone through in life, things that both characters wouldn't admit to anyone else. When Jess got pregnant with Luke's child, that's when the relationship truly became real. Jessica gave birth to their daughter, Danielle Cage, who would grow up to follow in her father's footsteps, complete with super strength and impenetrability. Luke and Jessica will eventually get married, making the lasting commitment to be with each other. Currently, they are still committed to each other. Luke and Jessica, while they are not perfect, both have a pretty down-to-earth backstory with just a little sprinkle and razzle-dazzle of superpowers and crime fighting. You know, the normal stuff. So, I think we all can admit that Jessica and Luke Cage worked really, really well together. If you've watched the Netflix Marvel shows, the Defender series, Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, I really love them together. I love them in the comics together. Currently, Luke Cage is the mayor. Jessica Jones is the mayor's wife, and she still kicks as much ass today as she always has, and he does the exact same. So I'm always rooting for them. Next up, we have, with no surprise, Rogue and Gambit. These hot Southerners always have taken my breath away for sure, ever since I first saw them in X-Men the anime series, and when I first read Mr. and Mrs. X comic run. That was the first comic run I ever finished, and loved it. Still reread it to this day. Fantastic. Since the 90s, these two have been a hot couple, which no one can deny. You can try to argue all you want, but you're wrong. But it's their transition from a hot, sexy flirting to real romantic love that makes this couple really worthwhile. Initially, when the two began falling in love, Rogue was still unable to touch those she cared about, or else she would drain their powers and leave them feeling weak or die, or they would die. Things like that. This inability to touch added to their attraction to each other. I guess it's, you want what you can't have. And Gambit's bad boy attitude left him wanting to break the rules. It wasn't until 2008 that Rogue learned to control her powers, celebrating the only way she knew how, with a big kiss on Gambit's lips. The two are now married and living out their lives as mutants, as X-Men. You can read a lot more about them in Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men in the From the Ashes era. It's easily the best thing to come out of From the Ashes, so I highly recommend it. But if you are more into seeing it in the MCU and from Marvel Studios, then you've seen X-Men 97, episode 5. We all know that episode. I will post my thoughts on that probably like next week, because I have a bunch of theories about that show anyways. But back to my list. The one that you really can't deny, the X-Men power couple, Jean Grey and Scott Summers. It's hard not to have them right at the top. If you like drama-filled, tumultuous, conflicting relationships, then you're like me. Jean and Scott met when they both joined the X-Men so long ago, the original X-Men team at the Xavier Mansion. And I won't say they've been together ever since. There's been a lot of stuff in between. But unlike a lot of people, I am a Cyclops stan. So if he's happy, I'm happy. Although their love for each other has always been strong, outside forces and new love interests always had their way of sneaking in between them. Jean's telekinetic powers are some of the strongest around. She's an Omega level mutant. She is the mutant, making her incredibly susceptible to manipulation from the bad guys. Scott always stood by her side, attempting to bring her back to the good side. It's this commitment that's so great to see, even in the world of comic books. Scott and Jean are still together. They are not living together. If you have read any of Stephanie Phillips' Phoenix run, Gina is up there in the galaxy trying to rewrite the wrongs of the Phoenix Force, while Scott is in Alaska being in charge of the new X-Men team. So both 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 comic runs are really fun to read. I will say Stephanie Phillips, although I'm such a huge Stephanie Phillips fan. The Phoenix run has been powerful. It's been exciting. It's had fantastic cameos. It's had great moments. Highly recommend it. And the X-Men run is great too. I love X-Men. I That is my thing. I love them so much. And I love what's been happening with them in the comics. But moving on from the X-Men and all those excellent couples. That was a pretty bad joke. I'm so sorry. Moving on, Black Widow and Daredevil. See, some of you don't know about these two, and some of you do. And I think they should have gotten more time together. Black Widow and Daredevil were a major couple in Marvel Comics to the point where they co headlined the Daredevil comic for quite some time. The comic became Daredevil and the Black Widow for issues number 93 to 108 in the 70s, as the two were both lovers and colleagues, loving each other and kicking ass together. What more can you ask for? As documented in Daredevil number 81, Natasha first met Daredevil in the most dramatic and intense way possible while saving his life. Other extraordinary events rapidly followed that continued to bring Daredevil and the Black Widow together as superheroes and civilians. Somewhat to their own bewilderment, they found themselves as a team fighting supervillains such as Scorpion. That was a cool one. And continuing to save each other's life time and time again. Matt has also found himself in a truly unique and somewhat wild situation of having to successfully defend Natasha in court against a murder charge from his former partner, Foggy Nelson. Although they didn't know at the time that these occurrences, which brought them together, were part of a secret master plan of the mysterious Mr. Klein, they nonetheless found themselves profoundly affected by them. Natasha's paranoia grew, as it should. She feared her widow's curse was putting Daredevil's life at a constant risk, which is fair because that tends to happen. The trial heightened her deep seated concerns about being a former Soviet agent in a Cold War America. She needed to escape. Her paranoia, however, was conflicting with an unexpected and powerful emotional and physical attraction to Matt that she quickly developed for him. As a result, the extraordinary series of life threatening circumstances that brought Daredevil and the Black Widow together created a powerful curiosity about each other that quickly developed into a loving and lusty bond that neither could deny. So, like it's this one has been in my head rent free for quite some time, and I remember when spoiler alert, I guess, when Natasha died in the MCU, I was like, son of a, we're never gonna get it now, never. But that one, while I was upset about that. There was one relationship that I feel truly robbed of. Some of you know about it, some of you don't, and I'm here to tell you about it. Bucky and the Black Widow. Bucky Barnes and Natasha Romanoff. The relationship between the Winter Soldier and Black Widow dates all the way back to the Cold War in the Soviet Union, where Bucky was actually Natasha's trainer in the Red Room. For some of you who are a little confused about that, Natasha was actually born in 1928, and she was injected with the Super Soldier Serum. So, during this time, Bucky was merely soldier and was brought to the Red Room to train students and turn them, hopefully, into Black Widows. It is here that Natasha, who went by Natalia at the time, and Bucky formed a relationship and a beautiful romance, showed each other that they were more than weapons for a country, and realized that they were able to live free lives, because who was going to stop them? Evidently, they got caught and were both punished. I guess that's who stops them. But still, you're the Winter Soldier and the Black Widow. This ain't nothing. It depends on the versions, how and when it happens. In some stories, they work in the field together as partners, which is where their relationship starts. as it tends to, and some it doesn't. But once they get captured in different versions, one of them gets brainwashed in the Red Room. Both Natasha and Bucky were brainwashed countless times, and Natasha was implanted false memories to guarantee her loyalty to the Red Room and the USSR. At some point, Natasha gets recruited by Hawkeye, we all know him, who helps her break the psychological conditioning at the time and joins S.H.I.E.L.D. The story of Black Widow and the Winter Soldier is a tragic one, which I love. I'm so into tragic ones. It revolves around two people who were taken at a vulnerable times in their lives and were willingly sculpted into villains. Their lives, more Natasha's lives, revolved around lying, deception, brainwash, false memories. As soon as these two try to get the other person to remember who they are and what they mean to each other, they're taken away again. A character is forced to watch the person they love not know who they are as their entire past is washed away by the people who created them. Throughout the majority of their stories, they are constantly trying to gain independence, will, and freedom, and only the other can relate to the horror that's been in their lives. And the MCU has hinted at this slightly, like in Captain America Civil War, when Bucky slams her on the table and she says, "You don't even remember me," or something of those words. And I was pissed. Like, why would you even do that? You know, you weren't going anywhere with that. Just gaslight. A little bit of gaslighting, whatever. But yeah, that's the one I took really personally because I would have loved to see where that went. I would have loved to see that play out in a movie. But I guess it could be too late now, but they did release a Black Widow movie after she died, so there's really no telling. But I did want to see that really bad. And also, they're just both so hot. There's no, it's almost rude they're not together. Just rude. But those are some of my favorite relationships from the comics and a little bit from the MCU. A few more relationships they're my favorite, but they are interesting to look into are like Iron Man and Hellcat, Cyclops and Emma Frost, Scarlet Witch and Hawkeye, She-Hulk and Thor. Like, check some of these out. They're very weird, but comics are weird. I like the weirdness. So, thank you for listening to my favorite ones. You be sure to let me know in the comments which relationships you like the most. Which ones do you think should be shown on the big screen? Or do you like some that are on the big screen and aren't in the comics? Like Steve Rogers and Peggy's niece. Or I don't want to talk about Black Widow and Bruce Banner. That one's weird. That didn't need to happen. It didn't need to happen. I don't care what anyone says. It was super weird. I think they're better than that. But that's for another video. So have a great Valentine's Day and have a marvelous night.